taking longer to show up in your bank account.
A human error has been delaying deposits for days. David Schumann takes a look closer at this problem that's putting finances in jeopardy.
Looked and it said that there was delays.
Payday came and went for Jordy Brady, except there was no pay.
Well, I woke up Friday morning expecting my paycheck, my monthly paycheck. I only get one a month, and it wasn't there.
Problems started last week, and the Federal Reserve says it's been resolved, but customers were still reporting problems Monday.
Now we're 72 hours plus out, and, rent and everything, and just, my life to live, and it's, becoming harder and harder.
Major banks like Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, and Bank of America say the problem stems from the Clearinghouse, a payments company that enables electronic money transfers in the U.S. A spokesperson there says there was a, quote, processing error where direct deposits from employers were sent to banks incorrectly. It's not a problem on the bank's end, but the details matter little to Jordy. He just needs his money.
It's a challenge, and if it goes on much longer, then there's other bills that are coming out, student loans and things like that.
The Clearinghouse says many people have received their deposits. Financial institutions are continuing to work to get the remaining payments resent. The company says people should work with their banks to resolve issues. Even that may not be so easy.
They just really don't seem to care at all.
Banks we talked to say it's still unclear how many customers the delay affected, and it may be difficult to tally the total impact across the country. David Schumann, WCCO News.
Morgan Chase told CBS that it will refund any overdraft fees caused by this issue. Wells Fargo and Bank of America did not commit to waiving fees.
Talk to me about the three forces that you see that are influencing this moment. We've got banks collapsing, U.S. dollars under attack, looming recession. What is going on? How do we step back and think about this moment?
I look at three major forces that are happening now, haven't happened in our lifetimes, but have happened many times in history. And those three major forces are the creation of a lot of debt and the printing of a lot of money to buy that debt, particularly because the government is running large deficits. And so they don't have enough money, so that government has to print that money. So that creation of all of that debt and its financial implications and its economic implications is one force. The second force is the internal conflict, the amount of conflict that's internally, largely due to the largest wealth gaps that we've had since the 30s. And that produces populism of the left and the right, particularly when there are financial difficulties. The third force is the rising power, the challenging the existing power, largely in the form of China and to some extent Russia. So let's call it the great power conflict, because in 1945, there's this cycle. You have a war, then after a war, you have winners, and the winners determine the rules of the game. And then there's this evolution of others becoming more competitive, and then you have a conflict again for who's in control. So we have that dynamic taking place. So those three influences, the financial, the internal conflict, external conflict influences are having a dominant influence. I learned before that when I was surprised, often it was because of things that hadn't happened in my lifetime before, but happened in history. Because of that reason, I went back and studied history, the last 500 years, on these cycles. There are big cycles that last about 75 years, give or take about 50 years, and of rises and declines. And I put that out because I think it's so important people understand it. I put it out in a book called The Changing World Order and in a free video called The Changing World Order. So when we look at each one of those, they're important. I also learned in studying history that there were two other influences that were very big, and you could see them. The first was acts of nature, such as droughts, floods, and pandemics. The changes over time in the evolution over time of people's learning and the technologies they make. So I'd say there are the really five big influences that drive everything, and they are the money and debt, economic influence, the internal conflict, the external conflict, the nature influence, and the, let's call it the technology influence. So as we go now into this, it's important. Again, I put it out as a free video on YouTube so that people could see it easily. And when we get into whatever we're going to talk about, it'll be certainly in the context of those things. And since they each affect each other, it produces what I call the big cycle.
The animation that you put out in conjunction with you.
Rent's going up. The food in your shopping basket is soaring through the roof. Your energy bills are sky high. Everything you want to buy is going higher. This is a proper, full-on crisis. So when's it going to end? My name is James Moore. I'm Chief Business Commentator for The Independent, and this is the cost of living crisis.
This march in London bringing together people from across the country. Many protesters said they were worried public services could be eroded further under Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. One of the areas under severe pressure is the mental health sector within the National Health Service, the NHS.
There is a crisis at pandemic levels to do with mental health in this country, and this economic crisis is going to make it so much worse because people can't pay for the health support that they need. So they rely on the NHS, and the NHS can't help them even though they want to because they don't have the money either.
Not developing, and this is what we know. This all happened just after 4 a.m. Phone calls and Wi-Fi signals dropping dead. Thousands of customers reporting blackouts from Perth to Cairns and south to Tassie.
An hour later, the extent of the failure started to become clear. Melbourne's entire metro system brought to a halt for almost an hour. It's not just transport feeling the aftershock, the health system too, from emergency departments to GP offices, all left in the dark.
So after 4 hours of this uncertainty and disorder, what has Optus had to say? Well, a little more than, quote, we know there's an issue that may be affecting some customers. Well, those customers aren't happy.
It's a little bit frustrating because I didn't know it was going to happen this morning.
What does it say on your phone?
Emergency calls only.
Can't use my phone, what can I do? I'm going to work, so yeah, I just first heard it from you know what I mean?
Yeah, pretty frustrating, but it's okay, all good.
Our Today team is across every breaking detail this morning. Let's start with Reece D'Alessandro in Canberra. Reece, the Communications Minister, is also struggling to get answers from Optus.
That's right, Carl. So what hope do the rest of us have? Optus certainly isn't saying much, and what they have said seems to undercook the problem massively. It's Nationwide who are being impacted right now. Other than that short statement from the telco, there's a little more detail on the Optus outage webpage. A message has now appeared saying our engineers are currently investigating a network fault. That fault impacting both mobile devices and home Wi-Fi services. The internet is down and Optus mobile customers are unable to make phone calls. Communications Minister Michelle Rowland has said the government is seeking information from Optus. I'm told early indications are this is not cybersecurity related, but the minister is not ruling anything out at this stage. Meantime, as the outage rolls on, it is starting to impact thousands of businesses as well who are unable to take payments.
I think we all need to be worried about it. I can certainly say at Schwab, we take this very seriously in terms of what we're doing inside our own organization and with our systems, as I'm sure every other financial institution is. But I think I have no greater ability than anybody else to speculate on if it happens and when and how big it is. But I think there's a couple of factors to consider. To the point made by the guest this morning, whose soundbite we just heard, it does represent potentially something systemic that really kind of moves into the entire global financial system. But maybe just as important would be what it would do to psychology. And if you think back to 2008, yes, there were plenty of fundamental and bubble bursting reasons why we had the carnage that we did, why the market went down as much as it did, why the recession was as ugly as it was. But a lot of it was pure fear on the part of businesses and consumers and investors. And that can feed on itself too. And versus something, say, like a natural disaster that isn't necessarily going to instill that pervasive fear, I think a cyber attack would.
You know, Michael, to some degree, we all get lulled into a false sense of security about all of this because there are plenty of security services out there that are designed, or their mission is to prevent this from happening, but then it happens. So, you know, are we really that safe from that kind of an attack?
No, Bill, but we never really are, and we haven't been for the past few years. When I think back to 2007, you know, we were talking about subprime, and we were saying, all right, we understand how subprime could be a threat. We didn't know that the banks were levered 40 to 1. Most of us didn't know. We didn't know that there were $2 billion, $3 billion of off-balance sheet SIVs. I didn't know what a SIV was, Bill, until all of a sudden you're sitting at your desk in the fall with the market dropping and overnight funds not trading, trying to say, now, what is it and what did it just do and how? So my point here is I actually think the earlier guest was a bit of an optimist by saying that this is the one remaining threat. It's not the one. We've got North Korea, we've got Iran, we've got a nuke that could go, and cybersecurity is big. But we have to, I think, look at the fundamentals underlying the economy and where we are. And, you know, it's been a long time since we had a recession. Something rather unexpected over the next few years will likely trigger another one. Investors shouldn't be surprised, but we will be.
Yeah. But going back to the element of fear, Lizanne, I mean, when you think about a cyber attack on the financial systems, I mean, think about that JP Morgan note, the great liquidity crisis, highlighting the fact that there's so many electronic trading desks, that there's so many products, so many assets in passive vehicles, and that when volatility spikes, there could be an absence of liquidity. Multiply that by the impact a cyber attack could have on a party with the rest of the market still trading, and we could see a flash crash times 10, I would think. I mean, if there was something that prevented liquidity from coming into the market.
Sure we could. I think that there are important differences in terms of the structure of the global financial system, the interconnected nature of it, the sort of capital cushion that banks had, the leverage that global financial institutions had versus today. That's not to dismiss and say nothing to see here. If we had a cyber attack that was global in nature, I still think it would be a serious issue. But there are some, not just backstops in terms of market functionality, but a background environment around the global financial system that is different and arguably at least marginally healthier than what we had leading into the global financial crisis.